Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome into another edition of GC Live. I'm your host, Jack Veltri, as always, joined by my co-host, good friend, and former South Carolina right-handed pitcher, as well as 2010 College World Series champion. He breaks it down just as well as anyone, Ethan Carter. Ethan, before we get rolling, man, how you doing?
Doing good, man. It's fine. We finally got some sunshine here.
Yes.
It's been raining for about 7 days straight. I got some sick Gamecock specific trading cards that I got boxes of last night that I'm excited to crack open here later today. And all other than that, man, just rolling right along. How about you? And now the season's over. How's life been?
It's been good. I was out of town this last few days. I was in West Virginia. I just got back yesterday. Unfortunately, Caroline, my fiance, her granddad passed away. So we were out of town for that. So I got back from Hoover last Wednesday, and then I was on the road to West Virginia like 2 days later. So I'm glad to finally be done traveling for a little bit here, after work and everything. But now I'm doing good, man. You're right. It's finally sunny outside today, and it has been raining the last few days. So I'm glad we're getting a little bit of sunshine as summer starts to pick up. And speaking of summer, Gamecocks, we're going to talk plenty about Gamecock baseball today. The coaching search is still off and rolling, and we're really going to dive into that now. And the title of this stream is, how do you fix South Carolina baseball? Well, I think you start with the coaching search and hiring the right coach. We're going to talk plenty about that and some other factors that I think we both think are important as far as what needs to happen for South Carolina to get itself back on track. But before we get into any of that, real quick, got to talk to you guys about our good friend Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans. He has been the presenting show sponsor of this show and all the other GC Live programs for such a long time now at this point. Like, honestly, ever since I've been here, he's always been the presenting sponsor. Clint has been in the mortgage industry for more than 20 years now. He's also a lifelong Gamecock fan. So if you need help with your mortgage or any of those housing needs, want to buy a home, get in contact with Clint at 803-422-6797. The NMLS number for Clint is 71597. Or go to ClintHammond.com for more info. He'll take you through the process step by step, help you out along the way, and get you on that path towards buying that dream home. Or, like I said, helping you out with your mortgage, because it can be very complicated. All that info will be above us here on screen. Thank you, Clint. All right, we're not going to delay any further. Like I said, I promised the next time Ethan and I were on here, we would be really diving into this coaching search. We wanted to give the 2026 South Carolina team its own moment to reflect on the season, what went wrong, were there any bright spots, etc. We started diving into a little bit of this discussion. Now we're really going to pick it up. But it is, like, how do you fix South Carolina baseball? And the easiest way to do that, I think, in my opinion, Ethan, let me know what you think, but I think it is ultimately hiring the right coach and bringing in the right staff along with that person.
Yeah, absolutely. It starts with the guy up top, and whoever they bring in to be the leader of this program next is going to have to kind of reshape the culture around everything and reestablish some standards that have seemed to slipped away the past couple of years. So yeah, I think absolutely is getting the right leader in the door, and then him building his staff as he wants, and something we'll get into, somebody that knows how to build a staff and has built a staff that's been proven before, and going from there.
Yeah, no, totally. So when we look at the search right now, what do we know? Well, we know that last week, Monty Lee is out of the race. We do know that. As of yesterday, James Ramsey, the head coach at Georgia Tech, is also out of the race. Now, how realistic was it that he was going to end up coming here? I don't know. Honestly, I think Ramsey's probably like a top 3 coach that South Carolina, we have on the hot board and whatnot, which you can check out on GamecockCentral.com. I just don't think it would have been realistic for him to come here because he's from that area. He's from Georgia, lives in Atlanta. His wife is a Tech alum. They've got their family out there. It was just going to be a very tough sell. Then you add in the fact of Georgia Tech just got an anonymous $5 million donation for his baseball program, and the fact that he just got a contract extension yesterday, plus Tech is going to pump in more resources to that program, it would have made it very tough to get him. Now, I don't think we were on here. Were we on here last week after Monty, wasn't, going to be in the running anymore?
No, that wasn't official yet. I think it happened later that night that the staff was dismissed and it was announced that they were moving forward in a completely new direction.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see, where they go from here. Now, obviously, those are the two guys that we know are out of the running for sure. And, it's I want to refrain from saying, like, top candidate, top choice until we get, like, some real solid confirmation that, like, hey, like, things are heading this direction for sure. Because, truthfully, we really don't know who that top guy is going to be until the season ends for these other teams out there. Because pretty much, I would say at this point, every candidate at South Carolina that we know is a potential candidate for this job. Again, there may be other guys that we're not even talking about here that South Carolina, behind closed doors, may just have an interest in. That's kind of how the 2024 search played out when Paul Maneri came out of left field and was hired as the next coach. I will say, though, most of these guys, if not all of them, are going to be playing in postseason baseball this week with regionals getting underway tomorrow afternoon. And the name that, if you are going to say there is a top candidate, again, this is not what I'm saying here, but the guy that has been talked about the most, I think, is the better way to put it, is Kevin Schnall from Coastal Carolina. So the latest update on him is, Jamie Bradford from the Big Spur reported last week that all the intel has pointed towards Schnall being, quote, the clear top candidate for the open position, which will go to an external candidate, end quote. Now, I want to say it was on Tuesday night, Schnall went on a local radio station, Sports Talk Media Network, and was asked directly about the South Carolina position, if he had heard anything about it. And Schnall said that he has not spoken to South Carolina about its vacancy, though he did mention that his agent has spoken to the search firm that South Carolina is working with for this hire and has gotten very little information. So what does that say necessarily? That that he's hurt? I guess there's been contact, but has anything really happened? Not yet from the sound of it, but obviously that's not really a surprise because the season's still going on. And I think that's pretty standard at this point. So it at least gets the ball rolling a little bit. Now, once the season ends for Coastal Carolina and these other programs, yes, I'm sure more discussions are going to be had. And that's where the interview process will really pick up. And that's when South Carolina will eventually make its hire. But as of right now, I don't think it's fair to say that, like, it's Schnall and everybody else. I don't think that's necessarily the case. Like, Schnall's definitely the most popular candidate for the job.
Sure.
Does that mean he is the guy for this job right now? We don't know that for sure yet.
No, I think obviously he checks a ton of boxes. He's an accomplished head coach. He is early in his head coaching career. He is in state, so he has in-state recruiting ties. He definitely checks a lot of the boxes. But to your point, you don't want to kind of box yourself in and kind of laser focus in on one candidate, because when you do that, and then if he says no for whatever, again, Schnall has deep roots with Coastal. There's no guarantee that he wants to leave that job for any job. So I think it would be short-sighted to get super focused on one person until you speak with a bunch of different candidates. So like where do you kind of see being like the most important things that the program would be looking in their next head coach?
No, it's a great question. I think it seems like this thing's heading towards them hiring a sitting head coach. So I would say that is probably priority number one, is someone who's done it in 2026 matters a lot. I think if this were 2 years ago, maybe South Carolina is a little bit more open to hiring an assistant coach, take a little bit of a gamble in that way. Like, I think from my standpoint, I feel like maybe Monty, should have been the guy to get the job.
Yes.
Now, granted, he's a guy that's been a head coach, but at the time he was an assistant on South Carolina staff. So I think they're going down the road of hiring a head coach. Now, things can always change. Like you said, Schnall could always say no. I don't think that's the craziest thing in the world to think that a guy that played at Coastal Carolina, has basically been at Coastal Carolina for his entire adult life at this point as a coach, has his dream job, likes being there. He's an alum there. I'm sure he's got his family out there too. And I think the real question is whether or not Coastal ponies up the money, more so. I don't know if Coastal can necessarily match like what an SEC program would have, but if they give him more than enough resources to work with, I think that would ultimately be enough to be like, hey, if I have everything I need here, why would I leave? I think that's the way if I were Kevin Schnall, that's the way at least I would look at it.
Absolutely. Because Coastal can't. I'm just agreeing with your point that Coastal can't financially match. If South Carolina wants to, if South Carolina is true to what they have been saying since this is all kind of kicked off, that they are going to pump in resources and at least match what they were paying Pulmonary and stuff moving forward, that I don't think that's a league that Coastal's going to play in. But to your point, do they pony up enough resources that Schnall is like, all right, I have everything I need and I'm good to stay home? And that's where, like we're saying, the search definitely needs to be broader than that. And I think there's some good candidates out there. I think there's a real good pool of younger coaches that have some head coaching experience that could come in here from day one and really, hit the ground running.
No, totally. And you mentioned some of those guys, like, for instance, you have Dan Fitzgerald at Kansas, who's another guy that I would say, I think a lot of people have said it's Schnall and Fitzgerald and then everybody else. I don't know about that, but I feel like Schnall's probably the guy that would make a lot of sense for the shop. I feel like, me personally, if I'm Jeremiah Donati, if I am picking the next head coach, I'm going with Fitzgerald from Kansas. I'll tell you why exactly. Because I know Schnall's the big popular candidate. So if you have not followed along the season, Dan Fitzgerald's the Kansas head coach. Now, Kansas does not have a ton of baseball history. They were not really good at all when he took over in 2020. I want to say it was 2022 it was. So his first season would have been 23. So he took over that summer. Now, the first year wasn't great. Second year, they got better. They finished 500. They won 15 games in conference play in 24. And then the last year was the big step in the right direction. So where Kansas made the postseason, won 40 games, was back in the postseason for the first time in over a decade, and got bounced in a regional at Arkansas, but still had a very good season, turned things around. And now this year, they're hosting as a top 16 national seed in the NCAA tournament, winning 40 games again. Oh, and also winning the Big 12 tournament for the first time since, I believe, 2006. So he's led a rebuild and turnaround and turned Kansas from nothing into something. Now, what do they do this postseason? I don't know. How much does it matter? I would say maybe a little bit. But I feel like for South Carolina, it's not like 2 years ago where the next obvious step was, all right, you've made it to a regional. That's really it for Mark Kingston. The next coach needs to come in here and get the Gamecocks to Omaha. The coach you hire this time around, yes, that's going to be the goal, but that's not going to be the starting point. The starting point is completely different this time around, Ethan, where you're at ground zero, essentially.
Yep.
Right? You've had the two worst seasons in program history. You're at rock bottom. The only way to go from here now is up. And I think the starting point has to be getting back to being respectable again in the SEC. So being more competitive, not suffering the most losses in program history again. You got maybe making a regional next year is a realistic goal for whoever comes in here. But there's proof in the pudding, and I think something to be said about a coach that has been somewhere with obviously less resources. We don't know exactly how much money Kansas has had to work with its baseball program, but I'd say odds are it's nowhere close to what an SEC program like a South Carolina can provide.
Yep.
So my thought is, if he can do it at Kansas, take a program from nothing into something, he could do it at South Carolina, potentially with more resources. Oh, and he's also a very good recruiter. Did a great job at Dallas Baptist. He was at LSU for 1 year, landed the #1 recruiting class in his lone season there under Jay Johnson. And then at Kansas, the interesting thing about Kansas is, and I feel like this is where the minimal resources comes into play, he has really done a great job recruiting JUCO guys specifically.
Sure.
He's had the top JUCO recruiting class over the last handful of years since taking over at Kansas. So the guy can get it done at multiple different levels. I think he makes the most sense for this job. That's just my opinion, though. Is he going to be the guy to get the job? I don't know. My brain tells me it would be Schnall if I had to put money on it, but I really would like to see them take a chance on a guy like a Dan Fitzgerald because he's done it.
Yeah, no, and someone else I'll throw out there that I have some experience with back from my coaching days, and have a lot of the same characteristics that you pointed out. Another Big 12 coach who lost to Kansas in the Big 12 tournament, but Steve Saban's at West Virginia. I think that he was the associate head coach, lead recruiter at West Virginia. He's been there for, gosh, I don't even know how many years now.
Long time he's been there.
Yeah, Steve's been there for a long time. I wouldn't necessarily think of West Virginia as a hotbed of baseball lore. And he's taken that team to another, they're a top 16 hosting team. I think they are the 16th team in the field. Just missed 40 wins with those guys this year. A lot of experience as a recruiter. Like I said, I think to something you said earlier, whoever it is, I want a good recruiting background. I know, obviously they're not going to be the day-to-day top recruiter. That's just not what head coaches do. They come and kind of close some deals here nowadays. But I think that somebody that has that experience of being a lead recruiter and has had real good recruiting classes, I think those kind of guys are invaluable. And somebody like Fitzgerald, somebody like Saban's, obviously Schnall did it as well. But I think if I had to, make a tier, I think it is Schnall, Fitzgerald. I think those two are kind of your top. And then I think Saban's, for me personally, is right under those guys. I think there is a good candidate pool out there that, is ready to make a jump to the big time SEC programs. And I think any of those guys that they may land could be real successful at a program that's ready to get back to the way it should be, to the respectable nature that it should be.
Yeah, and I mean, you make really good points on Saban's there, and I think a lot of people are interested in Fitzgerald. This commenter here does point out that he seems to be fading a little bit as a candidate, and I have seen that reported on our site with the Big Spur joining us and whatnot a few weeks ago. So that was brought up today by JC Sherbert. We'll see what that ends up looking like. I don't feel like you can rule out Fitzgerald necessarily. I don't think you can rule out anyone right now.
It's so early. Yeah. I mean, like you said, all these guys are coaching in conference tournaments. Listen to me. All these guys are coaching regionals. They're all hosting regionals. There's so many bigger things happening for these guys right now that, we're not going to get real into the weeds on what could happen for another week or two.
Agreed. Yeah. And it really just depends on how long these guys' seasons go. Now, for instance, if let's bring up the Schnall example. If Coastal goes out this weekend in Tallahassee, I would imagine Kevin Schnall's phone is going to be ringing Sunday night with a call from Jeremiah Donati to get the tires really rolling on this thing. That's going to be the case for anyone that I think. If there's any coaches that are done this weekend, I definitely do think that you're going to see South Carolina start to call those guys a little bit more intently and and get the interview process going now that the seasons are over. But yeah, you're right. Like as long as the seasons are going on, it's going to be kind of a little bit of a wait and see. Now, Adam does ask, who's a sleeper of a coach that South Carolina could get? I do feel like it maybe is like that Sabins or a Fitzgerald kind of guy that, Schnall's being talked about the most, but I feel like if there is a quote-unquote sleeper, maybe it's those two. I feel like you can't necessarily sleep on a guy like a Todd Interdonato. Now, I don't know how much he's really a true and tried candidate for the job. I do recall On3's Pete Nakos listed him as a name to keep an eye on, and he's a guy that has turned Boston College around, bringing them back to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2023.
Yeah.
And so they're in a good spot. He was at Wofford for a handful of years, so he's got ties to this state. But I will say, I don't know what the odds are of this happening. But again, I bring up the example from 24 where it's like they have all these candidates, and then out of nowhere, the guy that was on nobody's hot board, Maneri gets hired. I don't know if that's necessarily what's going to happen here. I wonder if that does happen, who the candidate would be. Like, is it let's just spitball here, for example. Is it the coach from Oregon that I feel like has always been tied to this job? Is it like a Tom Walter from Wake Forest? Is it Scott Forbes from North Carolina? Like, you can't rule out the unpredictability of that. You can't rule out the unknown because it can sneak up on you just like it did in 24, where everyone's like, Paul Maneri, like, wait, what was he even a candidate this entire time? No, he wasn't, because he was a guy that was just mentioned out of like thin air, essentially. So you can't rule that out. And I think that would be what I would call the sleeper coach, because it's just we don't know who that guy is right now, if there is a guy like that out there.
Sure. No, I think if there's a sleeper, if I'm going to peg someone as a sleeper, I think I'm going to say it's not, if there's a sleeper involved, I think it's somebody that's not going to be a head coach. Nolan Cain from Texas, if he wants to leave that job, the associate head coach at Texas, he's been with Schlossnagle. Schlossnagle was at TCU when Donati was there. Maybe that's a connection I could see happening. That's a little something. I know Nolan Cain's been on some lists, so I don't know how much of a true sleeper that is, but he's not a current head coach. I don't think he has any head coaching experience off the top of my head. I could be misremembering Nolan Cain.
No, he does not. So and here's the thing with Cain, to kind of piggyback off your point. Yeah, he's worked with Schloss for a handful of years now. This is going to probably ruffle some feathers here, but Nolan Cain did play for Paul Maneri at LSU. Won a national
That's right.
He was a coach under Maneri from, I want to say it was 2013 to 17. So he was at LSU for a handful of years working for Maneri. So that might ruffle some people the wrong way. I don't know. I lean towards Carolina not hiring a assistant coach just because, maybe
I'm with you.
I don't know if you can necessarily I don't know if I'd call it a gamble, because somebody's going to hire those guys at some point. Like whether it's Kane or Will Coggin or Josh Jordan from LSU, somebody is going to hire a first-time head coach at some point. Is it going to be this year? I don't think so, unless more unless more jobs open between now and then. South Carolina's the top job open, and I think they're going to be hiring a sitting head coach because of that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like I said, that would be, when I think of sleeper, that would be my sleeper, is somebody that they do go outside the box a little bit and they don't hire a straight up sitting head coach. But I'm with you. I'm thinking, I definitely think, of the three names we've kind of talked about, that would be kind of who I think, if I had to place odds, those three would have the best odds of being the next head coach of South Carolina: Schnall, Fitzgerald, or Sabins.
I would agree. We'll see. I try not to rule out the fact that there always could be a guy that we're just not talking about.
Of course.
That's the thing. That's the thing, is that we have the candidates that are reportedly out there, but
Yep.
no one truly knows what could be going on behind closed doors.
Not at all.
Yeah. So
we'll see. I'm very interested to see how this is going to be Donati's first major hire at South Carolina. Because everybody, all the other coaches have. Oh, I guess Ashley. Ashley was hired by Coach Tanner too, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So this is the first major hire for our AD, and I'm going to be very interested to see how it plays out here. Because this is he like I said, I mean, he was the AD at Texas at TCU. They had a great program there. Like, I think he knows what he's doing when it comes to this part of it, and I'm hoping that I'm excited to see how it plays out with our AD making his first real hire. This is his first chance to put his fingerprints on the athletic program. That's not just football renovations and statues and things like that. Like, this is his chance to really make his mark as the athletic director of our institution, and I'm excited for that. So I'm hoping he takes a big swing.
This is where you make your money here with being the AD, hiring the right coaches. Ray Tanner did not hire the best coaches, especially when it comes to baseball. We've seen that, right? So you're kind of hoping here he can leave his mark and get the right guy, regardless of who it is. I will say, though, hiring the right coach is the first step, I think.
Yes.
In this program. Now we're going to kind of talk about everything else that kind of goes along with that. Obviously, you got to bring in the right staff. You got to bring in the right recruiting coordinator, people that just understand the times a little bit and can get the most out of the talent. And speaking of talent, you have to bring in talent with you. Now, wherever the coach comes from, assuming it is somebody that has coached in the year 2026, players are going to follow that coach, especially if it is a head coach that is coming from another school, like a Sabins, like a Schnall, like a Fitzgerald. Guys will follow that coach to South Carolina. That said, you also have to do a good job of figuring out who you want to retain. How many players are worth retaining? I personally think there's quite a few that you could bring back for another season. I think there's some real potential out there with the guys on this team. Even though the results didn't show it, I just think a different staff can get more out of these guys. And I think there's a few that you really don't want to let slip away to go to other schools and can have success. You also have to do a good job in the transfer portal. The portal opens on June 1st. So next Tuesday, the portal is going to open. And if I got this question earlier from somebody else on our message boards. How does South Carolina handle the portal when it opens? So if they don't have a head coach, they're not going to be, recruiting in the portal. Like it was different 2 years ago when Monty was the interim and they were handling the portal. Nothing will happen portal-wise with them bringing guys in until the next coach is hired, which would make sense. That would make sense. Like, they just don't have an interim right now to run the ship in that way. They obviously Monty's no longer here. John Hendry's no longer here. Terry Rooney's out. They have kept a few guys like Stuart Lake, Chris Gordon, but none of those guys are the interim right now. So more so just keeping everything together, talking to the players, making sure they have somebody to go to. But as far as like you may see guys enter the portal. We saw Josh Gunther enter the portal 2 days ago for South Carolina. But as far as like any real movement, that's not going to happen until somebody is hired. Here's the next coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Because to that point, there's as soon as a coach is hired, if it's a head coach from another school, or even if it's a coach from another school, full stop, you're going to see guys enter the portal from that school. So you're not going to have. It might be a little bit later in the process before this roster really starts to take shape. But I definitely think that's going to be part of the interview process, right? Meeting with these coaches. One of the big questions was okay, from the current roster, where do you pull from the current roster, and then how do you infuse that with outside talent, whether it's high school, junior college, or transfer portal from previous school. That is going to be, I think, a big part of this hiring process for the coaching candidates that are interested in it, where who has the best game plan on how to attack that part of it, because that's, culture is one thing, and that's important, but you do have to have the right caliber of player to come in. And I think that's going to be a real big piece when it comes to hiring the next coach, is who has the best game plan, who can kind of lay out their 2-3 year plan on how to get this program back to the promised land. And whoever makes that pitch the best, I think is probably going to be in line to be your next head coach. And again, it's going to be, depending on where it comes from, it's going to be different. Like you said, Fitzgerald has really dominated the JUCO aspect of it all. That's where he's gotten a lot of talent from. I believe West Virginia's done more high school recruiting. Coastal's kind of a little bit of mixture of all. Like it's going to be interesting to hear all the candidates that do interview their pitches for how to get this thing back on track. And something we've talked about, I don't necessarily want just a quick fix of 20 transfers and we hit, that'd be nice, if it works, but I want to see whoever's taken over build this thing back up and not slap some duct tape on the wing that's broken on the plane and hope it flies right. I want this thing grounded. I want it rebuilt and built to last, and not just this makeshift, raft of hope.
But here's the thing, and you're spot on with what you're saying, that the strategy of portal guys, bringing as many as you can, that hasn't worked. We have seen that the last 2 years, especially this past season, where only 10 guys returned, and most of your roster was brand new guys that came from the portal, JUCO, etc. Like, you got to recruit the right guys, number one, and you got to be able to coach them and develop them and make them real, make them live up to their potential. South Carolina obviously did not do that. But the strategy of going portal only and building your roster through the portal has not worked. And I think you're right. This might take a little bit more time, but you got to get back to doing very well with in-state recruiting. There is so much talent in South Carolina that the previous staff just glossed over and did not really seem to put much effort into it. Like, a lot of guys decommitted. Heck, you're seeing guys from after the coaches have been fired, they're decommitting. So you're going to have to take – it may not be this year, but like starting in 27, that's where you're really going to have to start laying the groundwork for – because you need a nucleus, man. You need a core group of guys that aren't coming in from the portal, that are – whether they're from South Carolina and bordering states, whatever. You need those core group of guys like freshmen that come in and they're with the program for 4 years, and they're turning out to be your cornerstone players. I think Carolina's got a few of those guys. Maybe I think some homegrown talent, like a Will Craddock. I think if he stays, could be a guy that you build around. But then you want to bring in more guys, in a few years that can really be, backbones of this process. But I mean, no doubt about it. Like, as much as it is about bringing in good players, you also need homegrown guys. You need guys that are not just coming in from the portal, if that makes sense, because they don't understand necessarily at the beginning what this is all about, the tradition, the history. They don't get it. You need guys that are, whether they're Gamecock fans or whatever, just people that wanted to be here from the jump coming out of high school, I think is so important nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. No, because most of your transfer stuff is money driven. I'm not saying high school recruiting is not either at this point. But again, when it comes to the portal, it really is more, all right, well, who's got the top dollar? All right, yeah, I'll go here, without giving much thought. And heck, you see a lot of guys commit without ever visiting campus, when it comes to these transfer guys. Where this high school, you're going on official visits, you're talking with coaches, for years, a couple of years when it comes down to it. So there's more of a relationship built when it comes to the high school guys. They're guys that feel wanted. and are much more likely to stick it out and try to improve. So, yeah, I definitely think that, high school recruiting's got to be at the forefront. Some more like, micro fixes. They got to get they got to get stronger up the middle. They've got catcher, shortstop, center field. I think all three of those positions have to be brought in from somewhere. Like we talked about, I like KJ as a player. I think KJ is an SEC caliber player. I think him shifting back to third base is paramount.
Agreed.
I think getting in a proven shortstop, getting in a catcher, whether it be the high school ranks, wherever, they've got to find some catching depth. And I think getting a bona fide dude in center field. I thought Tyler Bach was admirable as defensively in center field this year. The bat was too hit or miss. Because I know he's got some eligibility remaining. But I think you need a new center fielder too. I think up the middle, the spine of the roster needs to be replenished with some new blood. And then, there are definitely guys on the roster that I think should be back. I definitely think KJ, I think Will, trying to think. I think Patrick Evans, he's got another year. I think Patrick Evans would be a good veteran guy to have back in the program. There's and then a lot of the pitching. I like I said, we've talked about this ad nauseum. I'm not gonna beat the dead horse, but I think I think you want a lot of your pitching back. I think those dudes performed admirably this year. So I think rebuilding kind of the offensive side of the ball is important when it comes to the next coaching staff. And then, having a pitching, because we talked so much about Coach McNary and just the game kind of passed him by and all this. I think whoever your next pitching coach is needs to be somebody that can relate to these kids from an analytical data, kind of where baseball's going level. I think Coach Rooney, fair, unfair, did not get whatever he wanted from his pitching staff across well enough. So I think you've got to have a good communicator come in that can communicate what they're looking for as far as it goes, what the pitching staff is, or what they're looking for as a staff. Because as we talked about last year, the technology is there. They have the gadgets. They have the trinkets to go in there and see how the ball's spinning out of your hand, how this grip works. So like they have the technology available to them. And I think whoever your next head coach in has to have a pitching coach that is ready to use that technology to their advantage and make, some guys, jump even more than they have in the last couple of years.
100%. Now you're spot on with all of that. Again, I think there are players worth retaining.
Yep.
But I think there's only a few guys that I would say, like, you really need to bring back. Like, I think like a Riley Goodman needs to be back. I think Will Craddock needs to be back. But yeah, beyond that, I mean, maybe like a Patrick Evans too, because of the versatility he adds. Reese Moore, I'd like to see back at catcher, see what he can do fully healthy, because I think he showed some flashes before undergoing season-ending surgery. But beyond that, man, it's like Bo Hollins, he did not do anything this year. He was hurt all year. You'd like to have him, but it's not the end of the world. I don't think if he's not here. I feel the same way about KJ Scobie. He didn't really show me much this year. He's a 250 hitter at best, in my opinion, and that's what he's shown me through 2 years. There's a lot of guys that you would be okay with or without, but ideally, from a pitching standpoint, you want some of these guys back for sure as you're trying to figure things out for next year. Real quick, before we get into the back half of this discussion, talking about maybe some of the smaller things that I think matter with fixing this baseball program, got to talk to you guys about our friend Andy Ludicky, who has been sponsoring our baseball coverage throughout this entire season and heading now into the offseason. Andy's a big baseball fan, and from his line of work, he has seen firsthand the fantastic traits that players bring to the franchise world. If you're sick of your job, ready to leave the corporate rat race, want to diversify, build wealth, and or leave a legacy, have a job and want a side hustle, Andy will help you out. He's a franchise owner as well as a franchise consultant, and he helps people find the franchises that fit their skill sets the best, as well as their passions and financial requirements. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help if you have any questions about business ownership. So head on over to myperfectfranchise.net. Again, that is myperfectfranchise.net to learn more, or you can text or call Andy at 404 973 9901. Again, the number to text or call Andy Ludicky, 404 973 9901. Thank you, Andy. All right. We are going to pick up where we kind of left off with last week's discussion a little bit. If you tuned, in case you missed it last week, we didn't really talk a ton about the coaching search. We talked more about like some underlying factors that I think matter with getting this program back on track. Of course, you got to hire the right coach. You got to bring the right staff. You got to know what you're doing here with the portal and get back to doing good with high school recruiting, as well as figuring out how you're going to build your roster. That ultimately matters the most, for sure. No doubt about it. But I think like we talked about last week, stuff like facility upgrades, improving Founders Park, getting the alumni back in the building, all of that matters just as much. So we talked a lot about that last week. I guess we can kind of start wherever with this conversation, but what else do you feel like, and maybe you can also include that, but what do you feel like ultimately is a small thing that really does matter in the grand scheme of things with getting this program back on track?
I don't know if I mean, it's, I think the biggest thing for me of getting this program back, and it's going to take time because the trust has been, eroded for this fan base, but getting Founders Park back to a place that's hard for opposing teams to play in. It is, rightfully so. Fans have decided that they don't want to come watch. They have not wanted to watch the product the last couple of years. But just giving the fans a reason to get back into the park, whether that's some promotional things that the school can do in the meantime while the programs get built back up. But I think we saw it that Friday night game against Clemson. Founders Park was rocking, and I think it made a huge difference when it came to. I think that was some of the worst baseball I've seen Clemson play in a long time. When it comes to how it looked in the field and everything. So getting Founders Park back to a desirable place for fans to want to spend their time. And some of that does come into upgrades to the park. Again, I was last at Founders Park in 2023, I believe. And it looked a lot like the same park I played in 2010, 11, and 12. So I don't know now. I don't know where the upgrades are made at. To your point, I think left field kind of needs to be redone. Nobody sits in those daggone bleachers hardly ever. Doing something with left field, I think would give it a fresh, almost a fresh set of paint. But yeah, just Founders Park in general. I know it's a very broad way to put it, but just making Founders Park a destination again for fans and not just opposing fans, and making that something that people want to be at. Gosh, when I played, fans were tailgating out before games. I remember being on home run duty during BP and right field, and fans trying to bring us hot dogs before games and things like people were out there, enjoying themselves, and that the vibe just hasn't been that way in quite some time. And again, I know the product on the field's the most important part about getting fans back in their seats and getting excited, but doing something, just as a program as a whole, trying to make it a fun place to play ball again.
No, totally. I agree. Like, winning solves this entire issue, regardless of renovations or anything. Like, they can leave the ballpark the way it is. As long as they're winning games, people will be there. That's the main thing. And Adam brings up the point, fixed parking. I agree. That gravel lot out there in left field, maybe you pave it or something. I think even the area kind of next to that gravel lot. It's just a big grass field next to like the swamps and whatever. I would do
Yes.
something with that. I don't know if the university owns that land or whatever, but something needs to be done beyond the ballpark. I'm not saying they need to make it like the Battery out in Atlanta or Ballpark Village like in St. Louis. I don't think it needs to necessarily be like what an MLB team is doing. I think that could be nice, but is that going to be worth it? I don't know. I think
Sure.
inside the confines of the stadium, stuff needs to change. I would say, like you said, left field, I think just bulldoze down that bleacher area. Nobody sits there, like you said. You may get people there when it's postseason baseball or like Clemson weekend or a big series, but really beyond that, who wants to sit 400 feet away at the top of the bleachers? That does not sound ideal. So I don't know what you do there. I think the last thing you want to do is make it less capacity, but at the same time, maybe you make it more standing room. Maybe you make it like a bar area or something just different to add a unique sense of flavor to the ballpark that I think it desperately needs. I think something like Arkansas is a perfect example. Have you ever played out at Arkansas?
We did play at Arkansas, and it reminds me a lot of Founders Park.
It does.
The design of it. Now their suites go all the way down the foul lines. And then their outfield area is a far more engaging area for the fans. I think South Carolina can take a long look at Arkansas's park and find inspiration there.
Totally. So that's what I'm saying. Like the area out in Arkansas, in case you've never been to Arkansas, guys, in left field, they don't have seats really. They do have a little section of seats, but really it is bring your lawn chairs. They've got grills out there. It's literally just a tailgating area. I think that is something Carolina should take a hard, long look at. Something like that. Maybe like what Mississippi State does with the different areas in the outfield to tailgate and barbecue. I think something like that. Maybe even like what Ole Miss does, where they're like throwing up all the beer and stuff. Like I think something like that is an easy fix that it just doesn't feel so basic with having seats out there, like kind of corporate in a lot of ways. And I think that could be really good. Again, maybe add like a party lounge or just something to spice it up to get people out there because, South Carolina's tried the last 2 years with the 50% off on ballpark food and beer before the game. It hasn't worked. Worked. Promotions are only going to take you so far. You've got to make real improvements to that stadium to make it worth your while. And now, obviously the football stadium has everything going on right now.
Sure.
Where will baseball fall in line? That's a question for Jeremiah Zanotti whenever this hire is made that either I or somebody will probably ask him about, okay, what does this mean for Founders Park moving forward? Because obviously the next coach that's going to come in here, like a Schnall, whoever it may be, is going to want to improve this ballpark for sure.
Yeah, and another thing, fix the daggone bullpen, man. The home bullpen is small, I guess is the best way to put that. It is tight in there, and it is. I don't know. Just find a way to make it bigger, move it. I know that would take a lot of whatever, but the fact that the visitors bullpen is a far more spacious and easier place to be. I think they need to do something with the home bullpen because it's tight, it's cramped, and boy, when you're playing and when you're hopefully playing in May and June in Founders Park, and during that time of year, that bullpen gets hot too, boy. So just something to again, like just some home field advantage stuff. The home team should not feel more cramped in their bullpen than the visitors club.
I agree. I don't know what the solution to that. I think honestly, if we're really getting deep into this, I do think maybe just a complete overhaul of the outfield in general
Yeah.
could be good. Like, we're already talking about left field needing to be redone.
Yep.
I think maybe just doing something different with the bullpens could be good. What does that look like? I don't know. Do you pour cement in there? I don't know exactly what the solution is there.
It's hard to know, and that's not a quick fix either. So then it becomes
money is a big
Yeah.
thing with that too. Is that it's got, and again, all this. I mean, where does the money come from for this? Is it the university pumping money in? Is it taxpayer dollars? Is it donations? I don't know what the solution is there, but I do agree. I've always thought it's funny how the bullpen feels so tight for the home side, but yet it feels so spacious for the visitors. And I don't know. I kind of like what Clemson did with their bullpen, where they moved the visitor bullpen down the third base line, and it's literally like, if you're a fan right there, you can scream and shout 2 feet away in this guy's face. Maybe that's something you do. I don't know exactly, but let's just say there's a lot of opportunity out there to make the ballpark way better than what it is. And on top of that, Ethan, I think you could really speak to this, because I'm sure some of the facilities for the players remain almost identical, with like the weight room, the cages and whatnot.
Yeah.
Arkansas, again, is a really great example. Shoot, even I think Vanderbilt is another good example. Like, or maybe not Vanderbilt. I'm trying to think of like what other schools. There are a lot of schools that have really nice facilities. I think Georgia was the one I'm thinking of.
Okay.
The facilities for the players also probably need to be improved. The locker room is going to get an upgrade this summer, from what I understand. Beyond that, though, I think the weight room could use a little bit of a makeover. Just little things like that to kind of make it feel a little bit more modern. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, the weight room is the same. I want to say it's the exact same. I haven't been in the locker room, but photos and social media that the university does, it looks pretty daggone similar. Now they have upgraded, like I say entertainment room. It's not what it is, but where guys can watch film at and those kind of things. Those things have definitely been upgraded since I was in school. So again, it can be done. To your point, it's where's the money coming from to do those kind of things? And I will say, with the way Founders Park is, it being kind of down in, that is construction that's going to take it's going to take a while if they are going to change things, and then B, because it's going to take a while, where do you practice? Where do guys where do you get your work in at?
That's the thing, is that you gotta consider that too, of
there's so many moving pieces.
It's a tough question to answer, because it's like, yes, in your head you could want to make all these changes and whatnot, but again, it takes money, it takes time. You could do it during the off season, but again, baseball is that sport where it's like, the guys are always at the facility during the summer, it feels like. And then school starts in August, and then 2 months after that, fall ball's rolling around in September. So it's like, and then you have November, December, and then January gets here, and it's like baseball starts again. So it's like baseball kind of goes year round for these guys, to where they're always at the ballpark. So I don't know what the solution is. It would be great to have like a Sarge Fry available right now, maybe.
he ain't lying.
That's not the case. So yeah, again, it's a tough question to answer, but I think we are in agreement here ultimately. But beyond just the coach, the staff, the players, you need ballpark upgrades and facility upgrades for sure.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I want to kind of touch on here before we get on out of here, as we're nearing an hour here on the show, I appreciate you guys all joining us, is what we talked about last week, getting the alumni involved in this program. Yeah. Feels like you mentioned it last week. There used to be a alumni game. There was a golf tournament during the fall. Like, there needs to be something like that, and so much more. I mean, we're coming up on more of these anniversaries again, where the 10-year anniversary like just passed a few years ago for the World Series teams and whatnot. And I think it even goes beyond those guys. Shoot, bring in The anniversaries have already passed again for the 20 years of the early 2000s teams that went to Omaha. Stuff like that needs to become a priority again, where you're honoring those teams, but you're also getting these players back involved in the program. I think like another addition to Founders Park needs to be like some sort of Hall of Fame, museum, something to just look more back on the history beyond just having the two championship trophies out in the outfield.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because I obviously each generation of players coming in is different, but I know for like me, the idea of doing something great enough at whatever school I was going to go to, and knowing that that would be recognized, years into the future, that tradition, that meant a lot to me, and I still think it means a lot to players. So when you have these things like honoring the teams in the early 2000s that went to 3 straight World Series, and obviously our run, and just these things that should live in the forefront of minds, and that this next generation should be striving towards, that should be celebrated and brought to the forefront, so that these guys that are playing are like, oh yeah, like when we do something like this, they're going to want us to come back in 10, 15, 20 years and be a part of this program. Because I mean, one of the things that I during my recruiting and decision making, like, it felt like a family at South Carolina, and it always had. And that is something that I think is extremely important to especially young people in this day and age of transfer portal and guys just kind of leaving and going and not having a sense of home, that to be a program that is like, this is a family, this is somewhere you want to be when you have graduated, and you can give no more to the university other than your time and yourself to be there, that is still welcome back. And I think kind of making yourself as one of those programs is extremely important in this college sports landscape that we're currently in.
One more comment here on the coaching search. Is Wes Johnson the quiet coach? Maddox Smith says. Now, again, I did not say, let's not misconstrue the words here. I did not say there is a coach out there that we just don't know about. But again, it cannot be ruled out that maybe perhaps that is something to keep an eye on. Because again, this is literally just how it played out in 24. And if I had to make a bet, again, I don't know this for a fact, so don't quote me on this, but I have a feeling somewhere that there's probably more guys to this than what we know. But that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Is Wes Johnson a quiet coach for this job? I don't know. Maybe. He's at Georgia. He's doing a good job there. Georgia's got like the top offense in the country. Again, Will Coggin is a guy that is a potential candidate for this job as an assistant. He's there at Georgia. The question with Wes would be like, does he want to leave Georgia? Does he think that South Carolina can upgrade in a lot of ways? I'm sure South Carolina can give him whatever he wants in terms of money, resources, etc. He'd have a much bigger ballpark to be at. Georgia's a small park, all things considered. That you talk about a ballpark that could use renovations. I think Georgia is right up there. I think they could.
Brother, it needed renovations.
They only hold like 3,500 people. They got to make it. They got to figure out a way to change that. That's such a small ballpark for such a good team.
It needed renovations when I played. I remember that was one of the parks I was most excited to play at, and I got there and I was like, "What is this?" So yeah, I would. Yes, absolutely, I agree with everything you just said.
So I can't necessarily. You can't rule out anyone at this point. Is he on the hot board? No, he's not. I've not seen him on any other hot boards that I'm aware of from other sites out there. I think he's probably staying put at Georgia, unless just something changes to where Georgia's not willing to give him the resources or whatever. I don't see him leaving Georgia anytime soon. He's got a really good situation there, it seems. But, never say never, I guess, on that. And I guess that's where we're going to wrap it up here. Again, we've talked pretty much at length for almost an hour now of what this program needs to do to get it back on track. Again, I think the simple way to break it down is hire the right coach, first and foremost. None of this stuff matters if you don't get the right coach in here, because we've seen what can happen when you get the wrong coach in here, past his prime, and the program is at an all-time low right now. So you need someone that can fix the program. Who's it going to be? Hopefully we'll know more within the next few weeks. I know there's a question here about when will the hire be made. Truly, I don't have an answer because it depends on when teams get done in the postseason. Like, if all your top candidates are going to Omaha, you're going to have to wait until the end of the month probably. Is that ideal? No, but that might be the circumstance that you're in. You're kind of hoping you can get a better answer after this weekend is worse, as far as where some guys stand potentially. Again, a lot of these coaches are coaching in the postseason this weekend. Some of them will get eliminated. Some of them will move on. And then beyond that, you got to get the right staff in here. You got to get the right players. From there, I think the other things that matter, we've mentioned the two big ones. Get the alumni back involved in this program. Make it feel like home for them again. I don't know why it hasn't felt like that for years now. Should not ever be the case for a program like South Carolina with so much history and tradition. Make them feel important. But also, you got to upgrade this ballpark. It needs it. It's time. I don't think you can really wait that much longer. The ballpark's been open since 2009, and it feels like it's barely undergone any changes.
Yep. No, I agree. You know, it is there are many steps to be taken, and you know, like you said about when it might happen. The top three people we've said, they all host this weekend. If you host, you're supposed to win. So at the very least, all three of them probably would be playing next weekend. So yeah, I mean, this very well could drag on to the end of the month. We may hear, you know, said I would expect not to hear anything till the middle or third week of June at the very least. So we're going to be here for a little bit. But that's why the people in charge get paid the big bucks so that they can put things in place and make sure that, you know, whoever the next person is the right person for the job.
Yes. So hopefully the next time we come on here next week, we're talking about something with a little bit more concrete maybe. Maybe we'll kind of have a better idea of where everything stands. Again, a lot of the postseason gets going this weekend with the NCAA tournament, regionals. A lot of those teams are hosting that. South Carolina could potentially be interested in their coach for. Time will tell where this thing goes. But even if there's not a coach named or the process is still playing out, we're going to talk about baseball here. The offseason rolls on for South Carolina. So I think that's going to do it for us. So appreciate you guys tuning in, joining us. As always, again, we'll be back on here next week talking more about Gamecock baseball and everything going on with this program during the offseason. Till next time, I'm Jack Veltri. As always, joined by 2010 College World Series champion and former right-hand pitcher, Ethan Carter. Take care, guys. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.